The lecture hall floated in quiet equilibrium, a curved glass wall framing the massive blue and gold swirl of the gas giant Helion Prime. The Academia Concordia hung at Lagrange Point 3, an academic oasis for 400 civilizations. Inside room C-14, 21 students sat at tiered desks shaped to accommodate claws, tentacles, trunks, and the occasional hand. Sergeant Elias Vance stood at the center dais, a slim holodisplay projecting bullet points in 3 alphabets. His voice carried the unhurried cadence of someone used to commanding attention without raising it. "Conflict," he said, "doesn't always start with a weapon. It often starts with a misunderstanding. Sometimes that's worse." A Caltheri student raised a delicate silver limb. "Instructor Vance, is this why humans carry those," it paused, translating, "edge instincts even in safe environments?" "Situational awareness," Elias corrected. "We don't just carry it. We live in it." The Caltheri tilted its crystalline head, refracting light across the walls. "On a Deathworld, yes. But this station? Perfectly safe." Elias smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Safe is a matter of perspective." He let that hang, scanning the room without turning his head. Every movement was subtle, the way his shoulders stayed square to the only exit, the way his left hand rested near the edge of the desk, fingertips brushing the comband on his wrist. The habits weren't conscious anymore. At the back, Nari, a feline-bodied Veshtan, leaned forward on her forepaws. "Instructor, what's the worst misunderstanding you've seen?" Elias considered. "The worst." His gaze slid to the floor for half a heartbeat. The one where no one realized there was a misunderstanding until people were already dead. That answer held the room in stillness. Even the hum of the ventilation felt quieter. A soft chime pulsed through his wrist comm, not the public frequency, encrypted. He tilted the display low enough that only he could see it. Security advisory. Fugitive KORR thus confirmed in system. Risk profile. Extreme. He knew the name. A shadow from war briefings, whispered by Marines in the mess. The Butcher of Livar. The chime blinked away, replaced by his own pulse in his ears. "Continue, instructor," prompted Vurin, a young insectoid from the quiet farming moon of Jal. Elias refocused. "Let's talk about escalation," he said. "How to stop it before it starts." He paced slowly along the dais, presenting slides on diplomatic protocols, non-threatening stances, and neutral phrasing. The students followed, their questions curious, unburdened by experience. He answered each, keeping his voice steady, his mind running on 2 parallel tracks. Teaching here, processing threat assessment there. Outside the glass wall, Helion's rings gleamed like frozen rivers. Security drones zipped past the view in twos, their movement too fast and too frequent for routine patrol. Elias noted it, didn't comment. "Human restraint," said Theri, a gelatinous scholar whose speech bubbled, "seems contradictory. Deathworld reflexes should lead to aggression, not calm." "Restraint," Elias replied, "isn't the absence of capability. It's control of it." Before Theri could respond, a faint vibration passed through the floor. Not an alarm, too soft, too brief, but Elias felt it in the soles of his boots. His gaze drifted to the classroom door. It remained closed, indicator light green. Still, something had shifted. "Nari," Elias said, turning the lesson into an exercise, "if a Veshtan in your clan raised their voice during a disagreement, how would you respond?" Nari flicked an ear. "Lower mine, and offer a deference gesture. It interrupts the challenge-response loop." "Good. And Vurin, what about your people?" "Step back. Show the primary limbs open." "Lower antennae," the insectoid said. Elias nodded, letting the conversation move while his peripheral vision stayed on the door. The students were mid-discussion when a sound cut through, not loud, but wrong. A soft hiss, the slow slide of hydraulics. The classroom door opened. It didn't chime. Every alien head turned toward the movement. The figure who stepped inside filled the frame. His exoskeleton was black as polished stone, scarred in jagged lines that told of blades, plasma fire, and worse. His limbs ended in curved, mantis-like scythes, each sheathed but visibly sharp. Molten amber eyes swept the room, resting not on the students, but on the human. Elias did not move. Recognition was instant and absolute. Korthas, the butcher of Livar. The warlord's gaze locked on him. A feint. The air in room C-14 changed, though the temperature didn't. It was in the way every alien posture adjusted, the way the hum of conversation died. Korthas stepped inside as though the space already belonged to him. His movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial. The matte sheen of his chiton caught the light from Helion's rings in jagged reflections. Elias had seen that silhouette before, not in person, but in briefing rooms and crime scene hollow footage. He remembered the still frames, burning villages on Livar's equatorial plains, bodies marked by scythe wounds so clean they barely bled before death. The warlord stopped halfway down the aisle. He scanned the tiers of desks, then fixed his gaze back on Elias. The students watched with the relaxed curiosity of those who had never stood in the same room as a killer. Vurin, the insectoid youth, clicked his mandibles in polite greeting. "Visitor, are you?" "Sit," Elias said, not raising his voice but cutting the word clean through the air. Vurin froze, puzzled. Korthas's eyes glowed faintly, amusement curling at the edges. "You know me, human?" "I know enough." Elias kept his tone neutral, hands resting in plain sight on the podium's surface. "What do you want?" "Observation." Korthas took another step forward. "I heard there was a human here. Deathworld stock. Survivor breed. I wanted to see what the stories left out." Behind him, the classroom door slid shut on its hydraulic seals. A faint click sounded from the control panel. The green status light shifted to red. Locked from the inside. Elias's heartbeat didn't change pace. He let his eyes drift just far enough to catch a detail. The warlord's right claw held a small, dark object. No obvious weapon barrel, but the shape suggested a grip and actuator. Could be a detonator. Could be worse. Nari's tail flicked lazily. "Instructor, do you know this person?" Elias didn't look away from Korthas. "He's not here for class." Korthas gave a slow, deliberate tilt of his head, the movement almost a bow. "Not for the lesson. For the hunt." A ripple passed through the students. Some straightened in alarm, others glanced around, unsure if this was still part of the day's exercise. Elias's voice stayed level. "Who?" "One of them." Korthas gestured vaguely toward the tiers, blade tips glinting. "A witness. I don't know which yet. I'll know when they move wrong." Thari, the gelatinous scholar, bubbled nervously. "Witness to what?" The warlord ignored the question. His focus was solely on Elias now. Elias straightened, posture neither submissive nor overtly aggressive. "You walked into the wrong room." "On the contrary," Korthas said, taking another step. "I walked into the only room that matters today." The distance between them shrank to 20 paces. The warlord scent, a sharp, resinous tang, reached Elias, stirring old battlefield memories he'd worked hard to bury. He forced his mind into assessment mode. Detonator in claw. Potential remote charge planted elsewhere. Armor. Natural chitin reinforced with embedded alloy plates. Vulnerable at joint seams. Intent. Provoke reaction. Isolate target. Korthas tilted the object in his grip. The faintest green light blinked on it, armed. "Station security's 2 minutes away at best," Elias said evenly. "You won't be here when they arrive." 2 minutes. The warlord's mandibles flexed in that unsettling, almost smile. Plenty of time to finish. The alien students shifted, picking up on the tension at last. Varen's antennae trembled. Nari crouched low, claws sheathed but ready to spring if needed. Elias needed them still, not reactive. "Everyone stays seated," he said, letting command authority bleed into the words. Korthas chuckled, a sound like grinding glass. Authority. Always amusing when wielded by prey. "You've killed a lot of people," Elias said, conversational but deliberate, keeping the warlord talking. "But you've never killed a human up close." Korthas tilted his head. You think that makes you different? I think it makes you curious, Elias countered. The warlord's eyes narrowed, but his step paused. That pause was what Elias wanted. Half a second to keep the detonator steady, half a second where those scythe limbs didn't move closer to the students. Thari's voice wavered. Instructor. Quiet, Elias said, not looking back. The warlord glanced around at the students, then returned his gaze to Elias. Which one is it, I wonder? Which of these soft creatures saw what they should not have? No one here moves, Elias said again, louder. Korthas's mandibles clicked once in irritation. Or what, human? You'll stop me. Elias's reply was simple. Yes. The word landed with weight, without bluster. For the first time, the warlord's posture shifted, faintly adjusting the grip on his device. Elias noted the detail. The thumb position suggested a pressure trigger, not a toggle. Dead man's switch. Release equals detonation. That meant direct disarm wasn't an option yet. You're unarmed, Korthas observed. I'm here to teach, Elias said. A flicker of amusement returned to the warlord's eyes. And yet you stand like a fighter. Habit. They stared at each other, the air between them heavy with calculation. The student seemed frozen between disbelief and realization that something very real was unfolding in front of them. Korthas finally moved again, one deliberate step closer. I'll find them. When I do, I'll end them before your slow security arrives. You won't touch them, Elias said. The warlord tilted the detonator slightly, enough for the blinking light to be obvious to everyone now. The collective inhalation from the class was audible. 2 minutes, Korthas said, voice almost playful. Tick-tock. Elias's eyes never left his. Then let's see how you use them. That keeps us in the same razor-edge standoff as Chapter 1's end, while escalating the danger and positioning the detonator as a central obstacle for the coming chapters. The butcher's name, whispered down the corridors after the incident, was Var-Rik Talshar. Elias hadn't said it aloud yet, saying it would make the past solid, drag it from memory into the present. But the name haunted his thoughts, a shadow pacing at the edges. The Academy's administration called the event a regrettable intrusion. Officially, Var-Rik had been a visiting tactical evaluator. The locked door, a malfunction. The truth was rotting behind layers of polite lies. Elias didn't have the luxury of believing them. He'd seen the way Var-Rik moved, controlled violence wrapped in silence. This was a predator in a place full of prey. The next day's training module was supposed to cover small unit field communications. Elias altered it without permission. The students filed into the simulation hall, the air crisp with sterilized oxygen. The walls shimmered with embedded hollow emitters, the scent of ozone sharp in the nose. The alien cadets chattered in their own dialects, clicks, growls, and sonorous hums, still buzzing from yesterday's strange interruption. Today's lesson, Elias said, voice carrying without amplification, is about survival when the plan fails. When the enemy knows you better than you know yourself. The cadets exchanged uneasy looks. They could sense something different in his tone. The simulation flickered to life, a dense alien jungle, leaves glistening with simulated dew. High-pitched insects whined in the distance. The canopy let in fractured light, shadows sliding like liquid. Team 1, Elias said, your extraction. Team 2, your defenders. Objective, secure the artifact and make it to the drop zone. You have 10 minutes. The exercise began. Within seconds, holographic gunfire cracked through the trees, simulated explosions throwing up clouds of vapor. The defenders dug in, the attackers maneuvered with quick bursts of speed and cover fire. It was all textbook, until Elias changed the rules. A third signature appeared on his tactical overlay, Var-Rik. No one but Elias knew he'd invited the killer into the simulation. The moment Var-Rik materialized from the virtual foliage, the balance shattered. He didn't move like a program, he moved like the real thing. Silent steps, sudden bursts, and strikes that didn't just tag opponents but dismantled their tactics entirely. Within 90 seconds, Both teams had lost over half their members. "Who is that?" one cadet gasped over comms. "That's not an NPC. Adapt," Elias cut in. "Or die." The panic was palpable. A Xeric cadet attempted a flanking maneuver. Varric anticipated it, slipping into his blind spot before the move was even committed. A sharp blow to the side. Simulation kill. By minute 5, only 2 cadets remained. Shiva, a 6-limbed Velar scout, and Drogon, a hulking reptilian heavy trooper. They'd stopped trying to win the objective. Survival was now the goal. Elias watched from the simulated tree lean, arms crossed. This was the real lesson, seeing them break under an enemy who wasn't supposed to be here. Shiva was quick, weaving through undergrowth, trying to bait Varric into overextending. Drogon lumbered behind, weapon ready, covering her retreat. For a moment, Elias thought they might pull off an escape. Then Varric moved. It was almost beautiful, in the way a predator's kill could be. One moment concealed in shadows, the next, a blur that crossed the space between them. Drogon went down first, a precise strike to the base of the skull. Shiva darted sideways, sprinting for the extraction beacon. She didn't make it. Varric caught her by the wrist, spun her into a tree trunk, and pressed the edge of his weapon to her throat. The simulation froze. "Lesson concluded," Elias said, stepping into the clearing. The cadets blinked as the holographic jungle dissolved, replaced by the sterile white of the training hall. Many were breathing hard despite knowing no real danger had been present. Some wouldn't meet his eyes. "You lost because you thought the enemy would play fair," Elias said, voice flat. "Out there, they won't." Varric turned toward him slowly, the faintest glint of satisfaction in his gaze. "They learned something," he said, voice low, accented. "But not enough." Elias stepped closer, meeting that molten gaze without flinching. "That wasn't your call to make. Neither was letting them walk into war blind," Varric countered. His voice carried a dangerous calm. "You know what's coming. I've seen the same signs." The cadets exchanged glances, unsure if they were witnessing a drill debrief or something more dangerous. Later, in the staff briefing chamber, Elias and Varric stood alone. The glass walls showed the orbital view of the planet, oceans turning in silver light, clouds spiraling far below. "You shouldn't be here," Elias said. "I shouldn't be alive, either." "Yet here we are," Varric replied. Elias resisted the urge to clench his fists. "What do you want?" "I want them ready," Varric said simply. "Because when they arrive, this academy will burn first. And you know as well as I do that command won't send help in time." The way he said they carried weight, something Elias didn't like hearing from the mouth of someone who'd once slaughtered without hesitation. "You think I'll trust you?" Elias asked. "I think you'll use me," Varric said. "Because you care more about their survival than about hating me." Elias didn't answer. That night, Elias sat in his quarters, reviewing the simulation footage. Varric's efficiency was uncomfortable. Every move was calculated, no wasted motion, no hesitation. He'd been right about one thing. The cadets had learned more in 10 minutes of chaos than in weeks of drills. But that didn't erase what he'd done on Livar. Or the fact that Elias still didn't know why he'd walked into that classroom in the first place. A chime broke his thoughts. A secure message flashed across his console. Unidentified vessel detected at outer perimeter. Response units en route. Priority flag. Potential hostile contact. Elias's gut tightened. If this was what Varric had been hinting at, the academy was about to become something far worse than a training ground. The training chamber's ceiling glowed with cold, sterile light. The air carried the faint tang of ozone, the byproduct of the shielding systems humming along the walls. Elias stood in the center of the arena, boots planted, hands loose at his sides. Across from him, Xerac loomed, no longer the quiet observer from the classroom but a predator unshackled. His carapace gleamed, jointed armor flexing with subtle menace. The twin blades at the ends of his arms caught the light like they hungered for it. "You've run from me before," Xerac said, his voice a serrated whisper. "This time, you will not." Elias rolled his shoulders once, eyes calm. You want a lesson? Fine. Let's make it quick. A shimmer in the air marked the activation of the arena's containment field. Students, alien and human alike, lined the observation deck above, their faces pressed to the reinforced glass. Rumors had spread fast. No one wanted to miss this. Zirak lunged first, blades arcing down. Elias sidestepped, just far enough for steel to skim the fabric of his sleeve. His own counter came as a sharp, open-handed strike to the alien's jaw joint, a weak point in the armor. The impact rang out like a hammer on iron. Zirak recoiled but didn't slow. You still think speed will save you? It's not speed, Elias replied, circling. It's knowing when to move. Zirak attacked again, relentless. Each swing carried weight enough to split steel, but Elias was never there when the blade landed. His footwork was precise, deliberate, not a wasted step. He wasn't trying to overpower, he was dismantling momentum. From the deck above, a low murmur rippled through the crowd. Some leaned forward, eyes wide, others flinched with every near miss. A sudden feint from Zirak forced Elias back against the arena wall. This time, the blade grazed his ribs, a shallow cut, but enough to draw blood. A bead of crimson fell to the white floor. You bleed, Zirak said, his mandibles twitching. Good. I'll take more. Elias's jaw tightened, but his eyes stayed locked. That's your problem. You think it's about blood. He shifted his stance, lowering his center of gravity. Zirak struck high, predictable now, and Elias ducked inside the swing. His elbow slammed into the alien's throat plate, followed by a driving knee to the abdomen joint. The sound was wet, and Zirak staggered. Lesson 1, Elias said, stepping back. Control the fight, don't let it control you. Zirak hissed, spines rising along his back. And lesson 2? Elias tilted his head. Don't give away your tells. The alien charged again, faster than before, rage lending speed. But Elias had already read the angle, the shift of weight. At the last moment, he pivoted, using Zirak's momentum to slam him into the wall hard enough to rattle the chamber's shields. Gasps erupted from the audience. Some banged fists against the glass, cheering. Others simply stared, silent, unsure whether to fear or admire the human below. Zirak recovered, but slower now. A line of green ichor traced the side of his carapace where a seam had split. His breathing came harsher, but his eyes, molten and unblinking, never left Elias. You're holding back, Zirak said. Elias shrugged. I don't kill in front of students. The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been a grin. A mistake. The next exchange was faster, heavier. Elias blocked a downward strike with both forearms, pain lancing up his bones, but it created the opening he wanted. His boot smashed into Zirak's knee joint, forcing it sideways with a crack. The alien roared, staggering again. Elias moved in, pressing the advantage. 2 strikes to the head, 1 to the abdomen, another to the throat. Each hit targeted a weakness, each time to prevent recovery. Zirak lashed out in desperation, but his blade glanced off the wall as Elias slipped aside. You want to know the real difference between us? Elias said, his voice low but carrying in the silent chamber. You fight to kill. I fight to end fights before they start. Zirak's breathing was ragged now, his stance unsteady. Yet his eyes burned hotter, as if each blow only stoked the fire. Then end it, he rasped. Elias obliged. His final strike was a pivoting elbow to the side of the head, the force driving Zirak to one knee. Before the alien could rise, Elias stepped in and locked him in a chokehold, arm under the mandibles, cutting off breath. The chamber held its breath with them. Elias didn't squeeze hard enough to kill, just enough for Zirak's limbs to slow, for his blades to lower. When the alien finally sagged, Elias released him and stepped back. Zirak collapsed to the floor, chest heaving. The human's own breath was steady, his cut still bleeding but ignored. Class dismissed, Elias said, turning for the door. The field dropped, and the sound from the deck above surged. Cheers, shouts, frantic conversations. Some students looked at him with awe, others with unease. But none looked at him the same way they had an hour ago. Zirak remained kneeling, head bowed. For a long moment, he didn't move. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse but steady. "This isn't over." Elias paused at the threshold. "It never is." And then he was gone, leaving the Butcher of Livar in the ring, and 100 eyes rethinking everything they thought they knew about the human in their class. The hull groaned under the strain of the explosion's aftershock. The lights flickered once before settling into the emergency crimson glow. The Academy's main dome was no longer sealed. Chunks of plating had been blown into the void. Only a segmented blast shield between them, and the black kept everyone alive. Sergeant Elias Vance wiped the thin line of blood from his cheek with the back of his hand. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low but carrying weight. His class, alien cadets of every shape, crowded behind him, eyes darting, every one of them realizing this was no longer a drill. Across the room, the Butcher of Livar stepped through the swirling smoke. His black chiton glistened in the red light, twin arm blades dripping with coolant from the ruptured systems. No guards. No backup. Just him. "Vance," the assassin said in a voice like stone grinding against steel. "I came for one lesson." Elias kept his stance loose, weight balanced. "Funny. I was about to give one." The alien took a step forward. The floor trembled faintly under his mass. "You think you're ready? I've ended warbands. I've killed generals." "Yeah," Elias said, "but never a human with a class full of witnesses." A hiss of breath moved through the cadets. They weren't just watching a fight, they were watching a truth unfold. The assassin lunged. Blade sliced through the air, fast enough to blur. Elias sidestepped, feeling the wake of the strike pass his ribs, then pivoted hard. His elbow slammed into the alien's thorax, drawing a sharp grunt. Elias didn't stop moving. He drove forward, forcing the alien back against a bulkhead. The Butcher countered, hooking one blade low to catch Elias's knee. Elias twisted out of range, boot slamming down on the alien's leading foot. Pain flared in the assassin's eyes, but it was only enough to slow him, not stop him. "You've improved," the Butcher said, voice almost amused. "Teaching does that," Elias replied. The alien surged forward again. A blade grazed Elias's arm, tearing cloth and skin. He ignored the sting. Timing was everything. One wrong beat and he'd be just another corpse. He feinted left, drew the alien's strike, then caught the inner arm in a brutal lock. His other hand drove a shock baton into the alien's rib plates. The electrical crack was sharp, followed by a low roar of pain. The cadets pressed against the far wall, some trembling, others leaning forward, unable to look away. Elias caught the wide-eyed stare of Zorvak, the tall insectoid who'd been the class skeptic since day one. Now, he looked like someone seeing fire for the first time. Elias shoved the Butcher away and glanced at the ceiling. "Cadet Vel, vent smoke from Section 3. Force him toward the shield wall." "Yes, Sergeant." Vel's hands moved over the nearest control panel. A hiss filled the room. Smoke shifted, thinning toward the rear. The alien adjusted instantly, moving to avoid the choke point. Elias was ready. He intercepted, slamming him into the narrowing corridor of space near the blast shield. The Butcher's eyes narrowed. "You're her student, aren't you? Captain Reyes." Elias's jaw tightened. "She taught me to finish what I start." That's when Elias drove him backward until his armored back hit the transparent blast barrier. The void stretched beyond it, silent and endless. The alien lashed out. One blade cut deep into Elias's shoulder, but Elias didn't break the hold. He leaned in, breath steady despite the pain. "You came here to make an example. Congratulations. Now they'll remember you exactly as you are, beaten." With his free hand, Elias reached down and yanked the emergency decompression lever. An alarm screamed. The barrier behind the Butcher opened just enough for the pressure to roar outward. The assassin's talons scraped against the floor, his body straining to stay inside. Elias shoved with everything he had. For a moment, the alien's eyes locked with his anger, disbelief, and the faintest glint of respect. Then he was gone, pulled into the void, tumbling into the black. The barrier slammed shut. Silence fell, broken only by the fading echo of the alarm. Elias staggered back, clutching his bleeding shoulder. The cadets stared at him. No one spoke. Even Zorvak's mandibles clicked in what Elias suspected was reluctant admiration. Finally, Vel stepped forward. "Sergeant, was he really?" "Yes," Elias said. "That was the butcher. And that's how you stop him." They moved quickly after that, sealing breaches, calling for medical, restoring comms. By the time the Academy's security team arrived, the danger was gone. All that remained was a classroom littered with smoke residue and scorched metal. Captain Mera, the Academy's security chief, met Elias at the infirmary. Her 4 eyes scanned him, taking in the shredded uniform and the bandaged shoulder. "You're lucky," she said. "You could have waited for reinforcements." "Not with him in the room," Elias replied. "He'd have started with the smallest one, just to prove he could." Mera studied him for a long moment. "And you think you proved something instead?" Elias glanced toward the ward, where his cadets were speaking in hushed voices, adrenaline still high. "Yeah. That humans don't wait for permission to protect their own." When the cadets were finally dismissed for the night, Zorvak lingered at the door. "Sergeant," he said, his voice rough, "I was wrong about you." Elias smiled faintly. "Get used to it. It happens a lot with humans." The insectoid tilted his head. "What now?" "You've lost a lot of blood." "I'll heal. And tomorrow, we start drills again. This place isn't a sanctuary. It's training for the worst day of your life. Today was practice." Zorvak's mandibles clicked again, but this time it sounded like agreement. Hours later, the Academy dome was quiet. Elias sat alone in the observation lounge, looking out at the starfield. The butcher's absence didn't feel like victory. Not yet. Someone like him never acted alone. There'd be others. There always were. But for tonight, the cadets were alive. And that was enough. His wrist comm chimed. A secure message scrolled across the display. "Next lesson will not be in a classroom." Elias exhaled slowly, the corner of his mouth curving upward. "Then I guess I'd better start preparing." Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere in that endless black, a killer had been thrown to his end, or his beginning. Either way, Elias Vance would be ready.